Hey, everybody, it's Sophia Nelson, and welcome to the third part of my series, Women Shaping America's Next Chapter. I'm really excited about this guest because I know her well. She is the chair of our county board of supervisors here in Loudoun County, Virginia. And you're wondering, Sophia, why are you talking to a chair in Loudoun County? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because Loudoun County is a county of consequence. We house 70% of the world's internet. Phyllis is a trailblazer. She's a friend. She is a devoted leader in this county, and she is absolutely someone who is shaping the next chapter of America's story. Phyllis, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I really appreciate being here today.
Well, I'm excited to have you for the reasons I said in the intro, but we're going to have a pretty in-depth interview with you as we have with the others. And my first two parts of the series focused on public education and universities, two college presidents who one on the West Coast, one in the Midwest. So I'm happy to bring the discussion back to the South and here in Virginia. Phyllis, we're going to start with, as I do with all my guests, a little bit about you so people can know who you are and how you got your start. You come from a military family. You grew up in Colorado. Tell me, how did your background shape your sense of discipline, service, and leadership?
Yeah, I do. I come from a military family. My father served 2 tours of combat duty in Vietnam. I also come from a very large family. And growing up, my mother and father told us every day, this country is the best country in the world. And the price you pay for living here is service. And they said there's all types of service. Now, I believe military service is some of the highest calling, but there's a lot of ways to serve this country, and everyone should try. So I actually was born in Stuttgart, Germany, was raised on a few military bases before we finally settled in Colorado. About 32 years ago, I met a wonderful man that ended up in Virginia. And before I even had children, the service I started was at our schools, our local schools. And I started first with a reading program at one of our middle schools. And I remember it well because the first book I ever read with the girls was a book called Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. If you never read that book, pick it up and read it. And then I went, and after I had kids, I became much more involved in their schools and the PTAs and the PTOs. And I would tell you, PTA, PTO service is one, some of the most cutthroat service, but also some of the most important service you can do is in your child's school. So I did PTO, PTA. I was a room mom. I was chair of Loudoun's Minority Student Achievement Authority. I was head of the parents' weekend, all types of service in the school. And it was actually my concern when I heard a lot of people just talking negatively about our schools and our teachers and our education system that made me think, well, you know what? I'm in the schools. I see how hard these educators work. I see how much the parents give back, and I don't want to complain about things. If I'm going to help, I'm going to help in the schools, and one day I'm going to run for office. And so my service really did start at the most grassroots level, which is in our school system.
You know, African Americans who grew up in the Midwest and the West often have a distinct civic and cultural experience different from those raised in the South or in the East Coast, as I was. How did your upbringing, Phyllis, shape the way you see community, identity, and opportunity?
Well, it's interesting. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and when I was growing up, Denver, at least the part of Denver that I was in, which was the Park Hill area, was a really, really diverse area. And my parents and my grandparents, especially my grandparents, were kind of pillars of the community. My grandfather was head deacon of New Hope Baptist Church my entire life. And so for me, I grew up with a somewhat dysfunctional but very close family, like all of us do. And for me, the giving back was always just something we did. I remember going with my grandfather to what was called the sick and shut-in visits to bring communion to people. There wasn't a Sunday that we ever missed church. My mother was part of one of the first political campaigns I can remember, was a man named Gary Hart. When he was running for Congress, Gary Hart was my congressman. I went to school with his daughter, Andrea Hart. And, my entire life, I watched my family figure out how to give back in different ways. And so this wasn't surprising for me, wasn't new for me. Um, And when growing up in Denver, Colorado, in Park Hill, because it was so diverse, you didn't really think, or at least I really didn't think about my race a lot or my color a lot, not until I went to school. And I went to school in Memphis, Tennessee. Things changed then. I really realized the difference between growing up in the West or the Midwest and then landing in the South. And when you land in the South, you go, oh, okay, this is a different experience. And so going to school in Memphis, and by profession, I am actually a mental health therapist. Going to school in Memphis, Tennessee, and that whole experience made me realize that there is a lot of, unfortunately, then and now, a lot of silent racism, a lot of discrepancy, a lot of what I thought one of the most important comments made was a comment made by George W. Bush. There was a lot of the prejudice of low expectations. I saw a lot of that in Memphis, and it gave me a new sense of purpose, and it made me understand the importance of giving back on a regular basis, but also the fact that as an African American woman, I had to come and had to work harder. I had to know more. I had to come with another level than some of my white counterparts if I was going to be taken seriously. And so it was more the experience of going from Denver, Colorado to Memphis, Tennessee that really changed my understanding of what it is to be a woman and a woman of color in America.
That regional difference is real. And I also think, as you've mentioned, it is one of our strengths and it can be one of our weaknesses as a country. I want to talk a little bit more about you and your work before you got into politics. Your work was in therapy, substance abuse, and recovery. How did that work shape the way you understand people as a leader now when they're dealing with crisis and responsibility, civic engagement, etc.? How did that impact you as a leader, that work?
I am by profession, and I still believe, I still stay at my profession, although I've been in this position for 10 years. I do think of my profession as being one of a mental health therapist with an emphasis on substance dependence. I worked most of my career with offenders, juvenile and adults. I worked as a community therapist. I worked in jails and prisons. And I remember so many people walking into a jail or a prison, so many of the inmates who I would look at and I think, these are smart people. I work mostly with men, but they're intelligent. And I think, how did we end up here? And I realized early on that there are some people who are in jails or prisons who need to be right where they are in a jail or prison for the good of society. But there's many, many more that I thought, had they had a different experience growing up, I'm not sure they would have ended up here. I have met some of the greatest artists, some of the smartest just human beings, the greatest poets, most creative people, scientists, all in jails and prisons. I remember one of the inmates in my jail in the program that I worked was one of the people that figured out that if you add the right amount of salt to hand sanitizer and let it sit for the right amount of time, you could almost make something that resembled drinking alcohol. And I remember telling him, "You're doing a chemistry experiment in jail." I told my clients all the time who might have been involved with drug use or selling drugs. I used to tell them, you're doing a lot of work in your head. You know who's picking up drugs, where they're picking them up from, who owes you money, who you owe money, who you can trust, who you cannot trust. So you're doing CEO work in your head. You're not a stupid man. You just put that in the wrong area. And so I came to believe really quickly that the people that I met in jails and prisons, if they had put those efforts in different areas, their lives would be very different. And I used to tell them all the time, you have been put here by society, but where you go next when you are released from here is completely up to you. And so I really did believe in putting programs in our jails. I was under Governor Terry McCullough, the chair of the State Board of Corrections. And in that position, I put GED programs in jails and other programs because I realized that the vast majority of people who go to jail come out of jail. So while they are there, let's do something with them so they don't go in how they come out. And so all those systems and all that belief of what people can be, a lot of my decisions to run was because of who I saw walking in my jails and prisons and thinking, if we could do something with them at a earlier stage, maybe we wouldn't have to spend the money and time and effort on them that you do spend when they walk into a jail or a prison.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that is probably mental health, substance abuse, people struggling with those type of challenges. I think that that is going to be a very unique challenge, Phyllis, for the 21st century, and that public officials like yourself will have to deal with that a lot in their policies and what they choose to fund and not fund in services. So I think it gives you a big advantage over your peer set, which kind of me into my next question, which is, you've built a life here in Northern Virginia, as you said, for some 30 years now as a wife, a mother, a professional, before entering public service and leadership. When you look back, what do you think most prepared you to lead at this level of one of our largest, if not the largest counties in the Commonwealth of Virginia? What most prepared you to lead at this level?
Well, it's one of the largest counties in the Commonwealth of Virginia, with Fairfax being largest. I don't know that I was ever fully prepared for what I walked into when I came into this office. I think that what you have to do at some point is decide that you can complain or you can do something else. And maybe you won't be completely prepared, but you know that you have the capacity to learn. You have the intelligence, you have the tenacity, you have the strength, you have the support system around you. My husband has been incredibly supportive in what I want to do. You find good people around you. My chief of staff who's with me, I think we're now in our 6th year together. You're willing to listen, willing to say what you don't know and what you need to learn. You're willing to know that the staff at county government or any government are experts in their field. So I might know all I need to know about land use and zoning, but there's somebody on staff who does. Let me go learn from them. And so you may not know everything, but it's important to say, I don't know what I don't know, and who can teach me, and being open to that. I think leaders have to be open to learning from everyone who comes across their path. It might be learning what you should do, it might be learning what you shouldn't do, but there's nobody I think enters my circle that I probably could not learn from. But mostly I think it takes just the belief that you want to help. And that doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. I have votes that I wish I could take back. We're not perfect people. I take thousands of votes a year. Not every vote's going to be the right vote for me, but you have to know that you're going to try, that sometimes it's going to be a success. Other times it's going to be a challenge. When you make a mistake, say you made a mistake and move on, but that you're trying to do it for the right reasons and at the right time. I am also a person of faith, and my faith has been very, very important to my efforts here. When I pray for myself, I pray for strength and wisdom, because I don't think I could do this job without those two things, strength and wisdom. And so I don't always pray, tell me what to do on this land use issue, but I pray for the wisdom that will lead me to the right answers. And so all those things working together. And I will say that I wake up every morning and I go, I get to be chair of the county again today. 10 years in, that has not left me. The moment I wake up and I think, oh my gosh, I don't want to be chair of the county, I may just walk in that day and resign. But for now, it is just such an honor and a thrill just to wake up to be chair of the county every morning.
If Oprah were here, she would have stopped you at a statement you made. I wrote it down because it was good. It's a tweetable. She would have called it a tweet. You said capacity versus complaining. That's really good stuff, folks. And that's one of those, I want you to stop and think about that, because I think we live in a time now, Phyllis, where complaining is not only commonplace, but we can do it now instantaneously with devices and on social media and on text and whatever, and we can broadcast it out to everybody. So good for you that you dig into your capacity every day. I think that's an important leadership lesson. So let's segue into segment number 2 of this, which is I want to talk about Loudoun County democracy and governing in a time of change. Local government has become one of the most visible front lines, if you will, in American democracy. And Loudoun County is no ordinary county. As we've talked about privately and here online, it's a county of great consequence. It is one of the fastest growing and most influential counties in America, with extraordinary economic, demographic, and civic importance. How has that shaped the demands of leadership for you over these last 10 years?
We have been such a fast growing county over the past 10 years. And what I say all the time, when I came into this office, my number one complaint people complain about is it was traffic. And now the number one complaint I hear is we don't want any more data centers in Loudoun County. And it's really interesting to see the difference. Loudoun County was such a fast growing county that for 10 solid years, we built elementary school or two, a middle school, and a high school every single year for 10 years. We were growing by 33 people a day. And on the last census, we were still the fastest growing county in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so we're an incredibly fast growing county, but you're right also in that the demographics of the county has changed. And so it's important to realize who has come to your county and what is entering your county and try to understand. Listen, you're not going to understand every culture, every person, but you do want to try to be welcoming and being respectful. And I think that one of the things I wanted to do when I came into this office was to some degree change the tone. I think that the tone of the county had been one that was kind of insular. It's us, and maybe if somebody else comes, we will accept them, but it wasn't welcoming. And so one of the things I decided that was Loudoun was going to be a county that welcomes people. And toward that end, I go to every month I will hit somebody's Eagle Scouts celebration. I go to people's 100-year-old birthday parties of someone's great grandmother. Do Diwali celebrations. This year we just ended Eid. I went to quite a few iftar dinners. I go to functions in the Jewish community. I visit different houses of faith. Now, I will say I'm a Christian, so I don't always worship in different houses, but I will visit different houses of faith. I try new foods. I try new music. I try to do things to let people know that I may not be from where you're from, or you may not be from where I'm from, but there's a lot of things that can unite us much more than divides us. And let's try to understand these things together. I also realize that things that people worry about, no matter where you're from or who you are, the gas costs the same amount. No matter where you're from or who you are, you're still sitting in the same traffic and you want to get home as fast as possible. No matter where you're from or who you are, you want your children to walk into high functioning, safe schools. No matter where you're from or who you are, you want your potholes filled. And so you just realize that, especially at the county government level, the level that does all the meat and potatoes task of government, it's important to get these things done for everybody in the county all the time. And so we wake up in the morning in Loudoun County and we're focused on serving people. That's it, serving people, whatever that looks like. Let's get that traffic light fixed. Let's put that roundabout in. Let me call DDOT because your road hasn't been plowed yet. No matter where you're from, no matter who you are, no matter where you live in the county, no matter if you voted for me or not, I would ever vote for me or not, no matter your age, it's service. It's always just comes down to service, which is the exact thing my mother and father taught all of us.
Loudoun County is deeply rooted in the American experiment in American history, going back to the Revolutionary War before America was America. And it's also central to the modern economy, data centers, the cloud business, the whole internet being housed, much of it for the world here. How do you think governing in a place that carries both that historical weight and that future facing responsibility, how do you balance those two?
Yeah, we actually say in Loudoun County, history meets innovation. And it's true. It's very true. We're a very historic county in so many ways. And as we celebrate the Sea of America, I decided that this year, every year I do what's called a state of the county. And the state of the county this year, the title of the state of the county will be Loudoun's American Story. And we would talk a lot about families who have been here for generations. I have one of the first African American sisters who are now have just been inducted into DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution, that will be part of my State of the County this year. We have Waterford Village, which the entire village of Waterford is an historic village. We have roads that we know during the Revolution soldiers marched on. If you go to Middleburg, Virginia, we have the Red Fox, where we know that the Kennedy stayed when they wanted to leave Washington, D.C., and they wanted to visit somewhere else. They visited Loudoun County. In Middleburg, we have all of the Douglas alumni who were the people who built their own African Americans who built their own high school because Loudoun would not desegregate and would not give them a place to go. And so they raised their own money and with their own hands built their own high school. They're still here. They're still around. And so there has to be an homage paid to that level of history. And I say all the time, it is the history of Loudoun County who put me in this office. I did not come to this office just on my own strength. Nobody will come to an office like this on their own strength. I came to this office because somebody decided that they wanted to drink at that water fountain, and somebody decided that they were going to sit in that schoolroom, and somebody decided they were going to register and vote. And all those people built this road that I was allowed to walk on that let me run for this office. And so I am so thankful and so aware of the history of our county. At the same time, we live in a county that is one, high growth, and you're right. Two, a high technology county. We have over 200 data centers here. That's another and longer story. But the data center world lives in Loudoun County, and that's tough because people don't like data centers. And I say all the time, I understand you don't like data centers. We're working on having better land use around data centers. But at the same time, if you really don't like data centers, you might want to pick your phone and toss it in the trash because that's what your phone is. It's a data center. And so there is this very careful balance to not only recognize the history, but preserve it in places where it needs to be preserved, while at the same time embracing the technology, embracing the future, and knowing that really what I'm here in this office doing, I am a placeholder. I took the baton from somebody else, and one day I will hand the baton to another person, maybe another person who's a millennial or a Gen Zer. And really, what I'm here to do is make the person coming after me have a easier time, not just in this office, but anyone who wants to try to fulfill a dream, that I've done something to make that easier. If all elected officials at the local level do, if all we do is build roads or build buildings, or if in Loudoun County build data centers, then we failed. My first job is to build the next generation. Towards that end, I literally, if there's ever a group of young people that wants to talk to me or see me or go talk to them or go visit the school or watch their play or whatever, I tell my EA to try to clear my schedule because I do want to spend a lot of times with our young people in our schools, both public schools, private schools, and parochial schools. I go to all of them.
So I want to do what I call a little bit of a lightning round here. I'm going to hit you with a couple of questions before we get into the next segment. And I think the backdrop you've just given is a good one to get into this. But, we're in a very different moment right now in public life. A lot of our politics and our policy is driven by anger, uh, and it's performative. There's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of controversy, deep public disagreement and division. How do you lead as a public official in that context with both accountability but also humanity? How do you connect those dots in such a difficult, tumultuous, chaotic environment?
I do think that if you're going to be a leader, you have to have a support system around you. And so I have friends, I have sorority sisters, I have family, amazing family. I have a husband who is still just the kindest, most wonderful, still good looking, most wonderful man after 30 years of my life. I have a great staff, my staff in my office, and then they have really strong county staff. I also do lean into my faith. I know I always say I neither run on my faith nor do I run from my faith. And so I realize that I am a pretty small factor in a very larger system. And so I think you have to always remember that and be, just with humility and thankfulness of where you are. It is really hard right now. Things are loud. I do not believe that despite what the policy, I do not believe we have a president who is a good person. And so I may or may not agree with your policy. That is secondary to what kind of person you are. I remember not agreeing with George Bush, but I thought he was a good human being. I don't agree all the time with Liz Cheney. I think she's a good human being. There's a lot of people I can point to that I may not agree with, but there's some place you find this place of humanity and you try to get there. on the humanity level. One of the people on my dais who I am closest to is a man named Caleb Kirchner. Caleb is a very, very conservative Republican who's a good man, right? And so he has humanity. And so I think that when I'm looking for that. I'm looking for your humanity. And so the ideal that we're gonna always agree with each other. I don't know, I always agree with my husband or my siblings, but the humanity part is important. I also try to focus on what is good for Loudoun County. If I could stop what's going on today in our country, if I could stop ICE from being in our airports, I would. If I could stop ICE from shooting American citizens, I would. If I could stop a president who celebrates the death of a war hero, I would. Those things are not in my control and not in my power. So, to a large degree, my life is the serenity prayer. What do I have in my power? And to a large degree, I think when I if I can make things better locally, then maybe that will spill over in the Commonwealth and in the country. So I focus a lot on what is in my power, and that's all I can really do right now is to make my home, my town, my county, my Commonwealth the best I can do, and then hopefully that will have an impact on this country that I love so much. So I think it's important for people to know that when you do love your country, dissent is part of loving your country. You don't, criticism is part of the love. You know, people criticize a lot of things that they love. They try to correct their children because they want their children to be the most wonderful that they could be. And I think we still live in the best country in the world, but I am concerned about a lot of things. And when I see that concern, if my voice can make it better, I will, because I love my country just that much. And I think we have to understand the difference between patriotism and nationalism, and that dissent is patriotic.
I think that's a great segue into our third section, which is breaking barriers, public leadership, and the next generation. So you talked a lot about, and one of the things that struck me, and I agree with you, is there needs to be more humility in our leadership. There needs to be more local connection and being connected to your neighbors, being part of the village, if you will. And even though we may disagree, we can be civil and respectful to one another, or even if we're both yelling at the top of our lungs, when all is said and done, let's go grab a beer together. Let's go break bread together. I think I love that about you. And I've experienced that firsthand as someone who was on the political opposite spectrum from you, and, different sorority than you, a lot of differences, but able to sit down, have coffee, talk, find commonality, work together on things like we're doing right now. It's very important to have your voice on this series. So my first question in this next section is, I want to talk a little bit about it's Women's History Month, which is why I'm doing this series. You're the first African American elected chair of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, and I believe the first Black woman elected to that role as well. What did being the first mean to you then, and what does it come to mean over time?
And in Virginia, I'm the first person of color in Virginia's history. It's interesting because while it is very humbling to have made that history, it's also kind of ridiculous that it took to 2015, 16 to make that history. I mean, come on. That it should have happened earlier. But I will say, I look back on people who I will never ever know. I look back on people like Yvonne Miller. I look back on Kathy Hudgens, who was a supervisor, not a chair in Fairfax County. I look back on people who are in office right now, the Mamie Locks, the Jennifer McClellan. Women in my family are powerful, strong, funny, amazing. My mother, my grandpa, my mother, my Aunt June, my Aunt Rita, my Aunt Frida, just phenomenal women that have all of them taught me something different. My grandmother taught me about what it is to be a lady, and all the things that you have to know about holding yourself upright and being very proud. My Aunt Jim was what taught me all about Black Power and what it was. First time I heard someone say Black Power, and took me to a Jesse Jackson rally, and he told me I am somebody. So all those women in my life help shape me. But then there's also women that I'll never know, like a Shirley Chisholm, who believed that you could be unbossed and unbought, and who believed you can bring your own seat to that table to sit at. And so to some degree, I really do feel like I owe two sets of people. I owe all these people that came before me that laid down this path for me to walk on, and I owe all those young ladies who are going to come after me. And if I don't do this well, and if I don't hand the people who are going to come after me the baton that was given to me by the people that came before me, then I would have failed. And so I feel a great, great, great sense of both gratification and thankfulness, and a great sense of duty to women who will come next.
Shirley Chisholm is someone I had the gift of knowing. And when I was a very young woman, I met her in a ladies' room in Trenton, New Jersey. She was speaking at an event. And I think I kind of stalked her in the bathroom a little bit, all of 20 years old or whatever I was at the time. And she stopped and talked to me for a half hour.
That's amazing.
I had my I Dream a World book with me for some reason. We were at a National Women's Congress event, I think it was, that she created. And she signed the book and we talked and I kept up with her until she passed.
Amazing.
One of the things I've noticed about you in the vein of Shirley Chisholm is you've been doing this job for a lot of ups and downs, but you've never been afraid to speak with moral clarity, even when it's unpopular. Do you think that's important right now in our public leadership?
And honestly, I have been afraid to do it, but I've taken the position that you do it afraid. I don't think that it is realistic to think that we're not going to be afraid sometime. This is, I mean, I get death threats. I get threats. This is that we're in a time with a government that has said that they will punish you. They will punish you. And so I have been afraid, but it doesn't stop me from doing it. I don't believe that if we stop every time we get afraid, we will ever advance. I don't believe that the people who are part of the women's suffrage movement weren't afraid when they were literally jailed at Quantico and forced to eat. I believe that when, civil rights movement, when dogs were set up on people, they were afraid. I'm sure that Benjamin Hooks was afraid and John Lewis was afraid. I think that they were afraid, but they did it anyway. So I try not to get, gosh, this scares me, confused with I won't do it. I have this motto, do it afraid. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, even if your lip is quivering, say it anyway, do it anyway. And so I don't want anyone to believe that I am some pillar of strength that never gets worried or afraid. I do. But I also know that if everyone who was ever afraid stopped moving forward, we would be where we were 50 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. Forbes is focused on women shaping the next generation, and this series is really focused on. I wanted to focus on women over 50 because I think there's something magical about your 50s that happens to you. There's a lot of changes, both physiologically, you go through menopause, and then you deal with other things.
It will.
But what responsibility, Phyllis, do you believe women leaders have, not just to succeed, particularly when they're first, like you, but to open doors for those coming behind them, particularly and with an emphasis on for you as a woman of color? You know that women of color have been under assault in the last year. That's not me talking, that's factual data. 250,000 Black women lost jobs in the corporate sector, private sector, public sector due to assaults on DEI. Given that context, the first question is what responsibility do women leaders have to bring others along with them? Secondly, what do you want young women, especially young women of color, to understand about power, preparation, and public service?
So first of all, you were correct. You're right. When the Doge happened, the people who lost the most jobs. I also have watched you. I've watched Yamiche Alcindor. I've watched Abby Phillips. I've watched female Black journalists be treated with so much disrespect, and in fact, be treated harshly, not just disrespectfully, but harshly, including you, Sophia. And so I it has been painful for me to watch what you all have gone through. Knowing that I go through it too, it's painful to watch. And so I need to say that when the president of the United States attacks, when he calls women piggy, when he calls women stupid, when he does all those things, it damages all of us. there's no one who is left undamaged by that. This is the world we live in right now. He might call one person, say, quiet piggy to one woman, but it hurts every single one of us. And so when I talk about my power, one, my power does lie in knowing that we are in this together. As a woman of color, I will tell younger women, especially younger Black women, that you have to show up a certain way. Listen, you might get mad at me if I say, don't come out the house with your hair bonnet on, but don't come out the house with your hair bonnet on because it just is not the look you want to put out.
That's real. That's real.
My mother used to tell us that we have to be twice as good to get half as much. That is still true. When I women who are in leadership positions, I watch them come over prepared. Not only is it not, because they say DEI, it does not deserve it, did not earn it. I hear people say DEI is did not earn it, but then I see who's in the cabinet right now. And I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding when we're talking about did not earn it. And so we still have,
The secretary of DHS was a plumber. That's a true statement. That's not hyperbole. That's not.
what kind of ability to bring people together are you coming with? Be a plumber. That's fine. But be a plumber of some character. Those are the things I'm talking about.
Would you want a brain surgeon performing brain surgery or a plumber masquerading as a brain surgeon? You get my point?
We had the first lady who chair a Security Council meeting at the UN. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? While at the same time saying Ketanji Brown Jackson didn't earn it. It was the most amazing moment to see that when I see people talk about Michelle Obama. Are you kidding me? So listen, we have to come not just ready, not just prepared. We have to come overly ready and overly prepared. But when you do that, when you come overly prepared and overly ready, no one can take that from you. I remember when I had my debates in 2015, I was running against somebody who had been on the board for 20 years. And so I knew if I was going to step on a debate stage with him and with due respect win my debate, I have to be overly ready and overly prepared. So what I would say to young women, especially young women of color, is present well. Present well. I'm sorry, but you have to present well. Speak well. Know your topic. Be prepared. Be over prepared for everything you do. And when someone says something harsh to you, they will. They will. When all that moment is over, go find your support system, go find your faith, and lean into it. Because the things that happen to us hurt. I will tell you a quick story. A couple of, I guess about a year ago, I had a very good man, he's a pastor of a church, say to me, he said, Sharando, how should I pray for you? Should I pray that you have a tough spine that you can take the hits? And I said, Pastor, please don't pray that. Please don't pray that I can absorb the pain. Please pray that people stop hitting me because we have gotten used to being proud of being able to take the pain. No, I don't want to be proud of taking the pain. I want people to stop giving me pain. But when they do, and they will, I also need to know where to go to get my comfort. And for me, that is in my higher power and that is in my support system. So when you walk in your purpose, that is tough sometimes. Sophia, you know this better than anybody. But when you need to go lean on the people that you need to lean on, do that too. When you went through your hard time, you and I increased our lunches together. We did. We increased our time together. So know that you don't have to do this and have to be in this pain by yourself. As women and as Black women, sometimes we pride ourselves in taking pain. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's remember
Well
we don't
said,
get it.
Chair. Well
We
said.
do not get it. But when we get it, know also how to go dissipate that and find people who are going to love you and love on you.
Yes. So we've come to the fourth part of our interview, and we're going to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes or so. So I want to kind of pare down and really focus on the road ahead. As we've mentioned at the outset, America's in her 250th year. The official celebrations will start in July 4th being the actual birthday. As we approach that landmark, and it is a big landmark to celebrate your semi-sesquicentennial, What most concerns you about the health of our democracy right now in our 250th year?
I think what concerns me the most is that truth doesn't matter.
Amen.
Every way doesn't matter. You know, having a HHS secretary tell us that vaccines don't work makes me very, very worried. Having somebody kill an American citizen on the street and within 5 minutes saying he was a terrorist, that is a problem. Having somebody tell me that my gas is $2 a gallon, well, I just filled up my tank and the gas was 4.73, right? I think what concerns me most is truth doesn't matter. At some point, at some point, facts and truth are real, and you cannot deny it and you cannot ignore it. And if you choose to do that, it will hurt us. So having a president and an administration who every single day flat out lies to us, and having millions of Americans decide that they either honestly believe it or they choose to believe it, and I think most choose to believe it, makes me very, very worried. The fact that people do not have health care right now and have to decide, do they eat or do they buy their medicine? It's because truth does matter. The fact that people are going to the gas station and putting a quarter tank of gas in their car because they cannot afford to fill it up, it's because truth does matter. So you can hear the lies and you can choose to believe the lies, but your reality says something different. And I get really concerned about the fact that people believe truth doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that is a powerful takeaway. And we both know that a democracy cannot sustain itself without truth. So that segues good into my next question. And again, we got to wrap this up here. So I want to get more in with Chair Randall here as much as I can. You spoke at the No Kings rally the last time around. I did as well. Not every elected official, however, is willing to step into those civic community moments because of that fear we talked about so directly. Why was it important for you to do so?
Yeah, and if you remember, you were there. I spoke, and as I'm speaking, a man stepped on stage who I didn't know and was very threatening in the middle of the
Remember
speech.
well.
Remember that?
Handled it very well, saying, "I don't know you, I don't know you," and
Well,
it
that's
just crap that there was an alarm, and then your security finally
right.
got
That
there.
goes to like do it anyway, even when you're scared. You know, it's important for me for people to see the people who are in elected office, who are elected officials, elected leaders, stand up and say, "We're still with you." One, we respect you. We know you're here. We know that things are not okay. And we believe these are problems, and we are standing side by side and standing with you. And so you're right. Not every elected official was there or did choose to speak there, and I understand that. I understand that. But I will always be there because I need people to know that I am aware of what things are going on. I am aware that for the country my father fought for, um, is the democracy my father fought for will slip away if we don't fight for it as well. I am aware that the baton is in my hand right now. And as I hold this baton before I pass it off to somebody else, that I have to fight in my own way. And so going to the No Kings rally was really important for me to do that. And showing up at those events are always important for me.
Sounds good, I agree with you, and both of us were born in Germany, by the way. I'm in Munich.
As a st-
Both of us had fathers who served, during that era. Mine was on Checkpoint Charlie in Europe on the wall that doesn't exist anymore. But I think that's such an important, ethos that we carry with us. Ethos, would you say, different from the ones you talked about with your family and all of that? Those are good formation values. What values have guided you most consistently in your office during these tumultuous times?
I do believe elected officials often believe that we know. And truthfully, we know a lot, but we don't know everything. The 9 people who sit in the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors are smart, dedicated people. That doesn't mean we know everything. So there's so much value in listening. There's so much value in humanity, hearing another person, even if the person is attacking you or saying things that's really harsh. Where's that coming from? Part of that, my therapist coming out like, where is all this anger? There's a secondary emotion. Where is this emotion coming from right now? I'm trying to really understand a person's hopes, a person's fears, a person's dreams. So much of those hopes, fears, and dreams lie in their children. And so if someone thinks something is threatening their children, what is that coming from? So I do think we've lost the the ideal of listening to one another. I know in our Discord today, people are answering the question before the question's out of your mouth, which means they're not listening to you. It's value in listening right now.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Last question. 50 years from now, 100 years from now, historians will look back and they will, I think, really focus on this last decade of public life from the White House, most emphatically, all the way down to local government. When this era of public life is written about decades from now in the future, what do you hope will be said about how leaders like yourself showed up for their communities? What's that hope you have?
You're right. I said this recently. You know, what's happening now will be in history books, and I think a lot of the history books well, first of all, I hope that the democracy survives. To be quite honest. I hope people look back at local elected officials and local government and say that is where the work was done. That is where democracy survived. That is where people felt seen. That's where they felt heard. That's where they got their water clean. That's where they got their roofs taken care of. All those things that are local government responsibilities. I hope people look back and think local government was such a pivotal part of keeping our democracy moving. Truthfully, that is where the relationships were made that actually are so, so important. I do not think that this part of history is going to fare well in the future at the federal level. And that's really unfortunate. But I do hope that at the local level, people look back and think all those people who were on unknown boards of supervisors and town councils and city councils and villages and hamlets all across this incredible nation kept the democracy moving along. That's what I hope they can see at 50 years from now.
I think that's a wonderful hope and a prayer and just a gift. And I agree with you. I think it's why the founding fathers created the government that they did with the Congress, the representatives being the closest to the people. And I think local government has to step in now and fill that void. And I think Virginia's doing a good job of that, being just objective that a lot has changed just since our new first woman governor has been elected. And I'm hoping that we keep going forward. Last word I'll give to you. Is there anything, Chair Randall, that you would like to share with our listeners and viewers? We have a lot of young women and women who are aspiring, as well as women who've succeeded. Anything that you want to share with them as the last word?
I would say you have to sometimes, but don't stop. You're going to make mistakes. You're supposed to make mistakes, especially if you're young. That's okay. Don't stop. I would absolutely say find people around you who care about you. I would say every once in a while, put your phone down, go outside, because outside is that's where real stuff happens.
Amen.
Time, I would say find a mentor. Your mentor may be younger than you, but find a mentor and find friends, lean into your faith, and believe in yourself. Even on those hard days, we have to give yourself a break. Believe in yourself because you're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. We're going to get through this, and we're going to come out stronger. And every day won't be great, and day won't be bad. But you're going to get through it. You're going to be okay.
I think that's a good word, folks. Chair Randall, thank you so much for joining us. We were honored to have you, particularly because you made time in your schedule at a very last minute request on my end and you filled in for someone. And I'm just so excited that we got you. And I look forward to doing more in the future. Take care now.
Thanks so much, Sophia. I appreciate it.
Bye bye.